it's that they're kind of they got it or they already know and or confused, anything related to the challenge or understanding the challenge. Feel free to ask anything. Anyone? Undernet.
Okay, first let me just raise my question and I'm gonna talk about like what I understood about this week's project. My question is, from now on, I heard you say we're gonna be using the 10x platform to share the materials or the documents. So if we were to, I mean, after like completing this training, uh, are we going to have access to the dashboard so that we can like refer back or get access to the
Yeah,
weekly challenges, or like is it better to have a copy of the Google Drive also? I mean, if we're not gonna have the access.
I think in principle everybody would have access. Who That's why you have your login will be your login
Okay,
to the
is it gonna be
system.
like a lifelong access kind of thing?
I think so. I think we haven't taught other way around, but we will update you. But in any way, yeah, that the possibility will be there to
Okay,
access all your data as well.
okay,
So
thank you. So this week challenge is like a very interesting topic. It gave us a chance to explore the very recent technology, very like trending right now. It's a Web 3 dApps. So dApps means decentralized applications. So in Web3, everything is just decentralized. So we're going to be building a decentralized application certificate generation for 10x. And we are also going to use value transfer with Algorand NFTs and smart contracts. So 10 Academy has been like using no more the traditional PDF format to issue certificate for their trainees. So this won't like ensure the validity of the certificate. It's very hard to track and even like for the party that's going to also see the certificate, it's also hard to verify I mean the authenticity of the certificate. So the Web3 is one of the technology, I mean, that ensures I mean very secure, and that ensures for this kind of application. I believe it fits well. And we use NFTs, Algorand NFTs to an NFT means like non-fungible tokens. So these certificates will have those tokens. So those tokens will be very unique tokens. So they're non-fungible means like they can't be like tampered with. That means it is possible for 10 Academy from now on, like if it is like deployed on a decentralized application to track and like to to have a very valid certificate. So in this week's challenge, we are going to be building a front end and back end application and integrate them through API. So for the front end, we could choose from React, TypeScript, etc. And for the backend, we can also choose either like in JavaScript. If you want, we could use Node.js, Django, or like Flask and Fast API. So we also gonna use a wallet. I think we are also going to connect a wallet to our dApp. And um, yeah, this is just the overview of what I understood on this weekly challenge. So Yeah.
Thanks, Internet. Anyone want to add? And especially those who hasn't understood, who just confused or anything. You should just start describing what you understood or what you think you understood, what you haven't understood. Feel free to, because that way that I will know where to focus. Not yet?
Hi, good morning. Based
No.
on what I've read so far, so I understand that Ten Academy wants to start issuing certificates, non-fungible, as non-fungible tokens. That's certificates that are based on the blockchain. But what I do not understand is the smart contract part. What kind of relationship will be between Ten Academy and the trainees that you can translate into smart contracts? I understand the part that they will be issuing certificates, right? But the smart contracts were that's a bit fuzzy.
You are rightly so. It's a bit fuzzy. I think as it's written as well. And that's a good point. In principle, the smart contract is to facilitate any other, like once the NFT is more or less like a certificate, right? An ID, and that can be connected to a smart contract that acts depending on, of course. So this is much more of like an ID. So it can be the ID of for the smart contract. So that means you will be able to operate or do certain actions allowed by the smart contract for the holder of the NFT. That could be distributing, I don't know, every year a certain upgrades or a certain incentives. Go on, Adiyat.
So, an example of such activities that say a trainee can operate on the smart contract would be what?
So one of the goals sometimes is that how do you pay, for example, when you complete, so just let's take what we call the toad chain. So a toad chain is a previous or an alumni which bait or basically vote. They have a certain amount of coin, toad coin, and that would allow them to, for example, someone who knows you would just say like, okay, I will put all of my coin on her, and then if you then get a job and you pay back, then that person will get a certain value because each coin, I don't know whether it's $10 or $5. This is much more of to allow previous trainees to, for example, still be participant in future trainings. Now, when that happens, right now we would just send and everything, it's all manual. You could incorporate that thing as smart contract, for example.
Okay, thank you. That's a bit clearer.
Yeah. Great. But those are the type of questions that I'm looking forward here. Any things that are not understanding, because then when I describe, then I will know, the state. So some people, of course, understand, we're all heterogeneous. So we don't expect everyone to understand or to have, common, but by the end of it, we should have some common understanding. Gannet.
Thank you. There is no data provided to us, and what kind of data we are going to, or if you give some overview on that.
Yeah, because there's no data. This is much more of a DevOps. It's like you write codes to solve a certain problem more than it's a Web3, so it's much more of like you're building an application, in this case, a decentralized application to address a certain, a certain problem, in this case, the generation. So the data will be, for example, when one person then, like a trainee, issues what is called opt-in, then data is generated through the system, not you don't start from a data, because this is just building an application.
Yeah, I understood that. But if such which is the business flow of Teen Academy, if we know that more, it's possible to get from the websites about the Teen Academy.
Yeah, but in this case, you don't need to. Like in this case, you don't need to, because what you need is that, this is basically, there would be someone who would be issuing an opt-in. So as you get to build it, you start understanding what that opt-in is. Basically, it's another type of, in blockchain forms, it's almost always you're talking about transactions. So that means you basically, in Web 2 sense or in HTTP sense, you're basically making HTTP requests, right? And the get and the post and the put, whatever commands. And here you're thinking in terms of transactions. One entity does transaction or puts transaction, and then the blockchain registers that, and continues.
Okay.
So in this sense, yeah, like an allowed person, anyone for that sake, could request an opt-in. And when the opt-in is requested and when the opt-in is validated, then it can be generated. So you're basically allowing people, just a system that anyone, for that matter, would basically opt in for a certificate. And then that means it's just type of transaction. Just saying it's a zero value transaction, it's called. You just say, okay, I have finished this, therefore give me my certificate. And then there will be another login system, of course, which is called the admin login, and then you can call it the trainee login. And the admin logs in, sees this opt-in, and then generates basically a certificate and then give them. Right, so there will be that kind of system that you're building, and you're focused more on that element only. You don't need to understand the details of Teen Academy for that matter.
Okay.
It's just
Thank you.
But exactly for the smart contract, of course, you would understand elements like what I described, which is the thought chain and all that. Okay, Margaret.
Hi, my question is about the user interface. So for on the document, they say that it's the certificates are distributed as simple PDF files without the ability to verify their authenticity. So on blockchain or on smart contracts, how will a third party that is not me or Teen Academy get to ascertain that this is real, and how will will he have to log in to check?
No. So the principle is that who was the issuer. So the NFT has basically information about unchangeable information, right? So of course, NFT can be also transferable. In the case of like now we are talking about, blockchains there are different types of blockchains. I mean, Bitcoin is one blockchain, Ethereum is another blockchain, and Algorand is another blockchain. In all of them, for example, of course, Bitcoin doesn't have concept of NFT. It only has a concept of basically account, or even not accounts. Basically, like there is a Bitcoin, let's call it account, and that is basically a hash of something, and then that is connected to a certain value. Like it's basically whatever the last amount that is left or connected to it, is the value of that account, and the holder of the private key is the owner of that. So it can be a dog that is owning that account, then that dog has the value of that. Nobody has, right? So now it's a known thing. Nobody can go and change, and that's what blockchains are. It's much harder to go and tamper. Now, by looking at the value of this thing, you would know, okay, this account has this amount of value. In Ethereum, it's a slightly different. You still have an account, but this is more, you also can put smart contracts associated to that. And the smart contract, again, is just a code that is hashed. So that means you can't change it. That's basically, and then it does the same way. And then you can implement NFTs in Ethereum sense with the smart contract. Algorand, on the other hand, just like an account, just a normal business, kind of token, which is called rand. And it has NFT as just another account. You don't need to write smart contract to create NFT in the sense of Algorand. So now when it is generated, so that's basically like, again, an account. It's like an account which has associated to a certain hash, in this case, the hash of an NFT, right? Or, and then kind of hand waving here. But now the issuer can be checked. It's a public thing. Anyone can check who issued this, and they can check the transaction, because that's what blockchains are, at least public blockchains. There can be private blockchains as well, and therefore exactly who issued it. And if it's Ten Academy who issued it, that's it. It's Ten Academy. It's built in, and it's public, so anyone can check that transaction.
Where can they check? Is it on the?
Yeah, there are explorers, like
Okay.
so many. I mean, I think I've probably listed a few explorers. So the upflow is for you, but you can explore. So Algorand Explorer, like. So you can just go and explore all the transactions. It's public, right? So this transaction, if I want to go and I can check the sender, the group, the amount, the receiver, whatever element. And live, you can check everything. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So all of everything about the code, the smart contract, if you write, everything is just, of course, if you want it to be trustworthy, it has to be open. People have to check the code, but they can't change. Nobody can change the code as well. But it's explorable. Everything that is, every transaction, because why should it be? Because, someone is confirming that this is a correct transaction, and they must see the transaction to basically check that, right? So in a way, that's what really is blockchain is for. It's just a public, and everything is, it's the owner of it who can do the transaction, who can issue a transaction. That private key that they have is the only thing that's hidden, because with that, everything is possible. Like that's why wallets are important. You'll come to that. It's the key element becomes that.
And if we have that on the internet, what's the point of us creating a dApp?
But that's the Explorer. The dApp is just to allow you to create that transaction, that facilitate that.
Okay, so a dApp is not for end users.
No, it is for end users. I mean, this is who created this? Who created some transaction? Like, I mean, who created that? Like, somebody has to create it. And how did they create it? Through a certain program code that they wrote, right?
Okay.
So that allows this to be happen, to be sent to the blockchain, to connect with the API of the blockchain and take some data, kind of compose kind of basically transaction and post it and then confirm and then do that. Once that is done, of course, you will be able to see it everywhere. But the process that allows you to do that, it's what you're creating, the back end and the front end. The front end for people to log in, to opt in, to approve. The back end to basically be able to connect with the blockchain and basically commit transactions.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
If
Ask as you want.
Okay, so if many people can just create dApps and leave them online, how exactly are you going to affirm that this is a legit website and this is not legit?
It's exactly by the wallet and by everything that you do normally. I mean, it's basically, I tell you, okay, here is the opt-in. You basically are, maybe the question I don't understand, in a way that you only use what you want, right? I mean, it's just different people create different things. One is, for example, in this case, is just for certificate issue, but another one you can create for game, for play, another one for something, right? So anyone can create for anything. Ultimately, whoever is playing there, they must know. I mean, they must know what they're doing. In a way, it's not different from the real world we know. Everybody has website, you go and check. Everybody has sometimes built some apps, mobile apps, for example, that you just go and do something with it when you want it. But there are billions and maybe millions of apps that you will never download or you'll never interact with. Or did I get the question wrong?
No, I'm trying to get the whole idea or the importance behind NFTs.
This is nothing got to do that. This is nothing different from building, like, let's say, a website. 10 Academy wants a website that you can log into. And let's imagine there is no Web3 thing here. There's no blockchain thing. You still will build a front end that you allow trainees to log in or to do something. And then you have another one for admins to do something. And then the backend, of course, to allow these things to get exchanged. So it's just a normal element. What makes it Web3 or what makes it dApp instead of app is basically, or web app in that case. So this one would be web dApp, and the other one would be just web app. The only difference is that the backend doesn't write into a blockchain. It writes into a database, maybe normal database.
Okay.
So nothing different. So the one really that makes it a dApp is just that it's interacting in the backend. It's interacting with a blockchain.
Okay.
It saves everything. It saves its state, whatever, in the blockchain. And that's really why actually you should read this one more, Understanding Web3. So I'm just putting some references in some of them to help you. It will just tell you, the only difference is just that, where it's stored and how it's stored and all that. And so this blockchain in this case is just acting as a truth, a global state, like everybody writes to it. And then that allows you to have the advantage of Web3. It has a state. That means it can be checked, it can be transferred. Yeah, so I think this one would help you more in that sense.
Thanks.
Okay. And just while I'm there, you also have to, I think there is this one I also attached just about blockchain explained more in the form of just the blockchain itself, right? How, things are, what is a block, but then you can actually click, kind of, you go through, if you want to, right? So it's kind of, will take you just at least basic understanding of what that are, how things are working. I think this really would help you. And then there is another one, actually this one you can actually start from exactly what is a hash. You can just basically check here, whatever you change. So even an empty field has a hash, because an empty thing is also a data. If you add one thing, it changes, and that's what the hash, doesn't matter, like, any small change both changes it, right? So that's, and then the change of this thing with respect to the hash, how the hash changes is very unrelated. That's what makes hashing very different. And then you go to the block, what a block, how do you mine something, what does it mean? You can explore, and this one is just basically will help you frame it and play with it. Well, basically a block is just whatever you number, whatever you say. Yeah, Bal sent 5 USD to, let's say, Everest. Like, so this one, for example, is just one data, and the data is hashed, right? And then with this, what nuances you read, and this is just a block. And you can mine it, and mining means, depending on the nuance, the change here. It's in terms of like it has to have a certain finding a certain value that makes the hash, when you put together with that. So basically you are putting something in front of it, such that when you do that, the first 4 or 5, depending on the nuance, becomes 0. That mining process means that. See, now in this case it's 4. So whatever it was found, the nuance was added to this, resulted into the 0. This is called a block. A block is mined. Then now you understand about blockchain and what is distributed and tokens and Coinbase. So you can explore with that as well. So I've listed that one as blockchain explained and blockchain demo, the one so you can play and understand. And I think, yeah, the very first one would tell you about the overall applications and what a Web3, what you do with that, and hopefully you will understand more. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Margaret?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Still, really ask as many questions until you understand. Don't try to feel okay, like I'm taking time. I mean, maybe not here, but in every of the tutorials, whatever. Just ask. Don't let it go without understanding. Okay, Mohammed.
So could you give us a basic or general description about the outcomes of this week challenge?
Sorry?
Do you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
I said, could you give us a basic description about this week outcomes?
Yeah, I will. As soon as we finish these questions, absolutely, that's the one thing that I would do. But just again, to be able to answer while just right here, the very, the part is really just the front end, back end, and there can be 2 types of backend. One is the Web3 backend, and the other one is the Web2 backend. Let's call it just, by Web3, it means interacting with the API, like, with the blockchain API. In this case, Algorand blockchain. So if you look at it here, you would design and implement backend, which consists of the backend logic, which is API endpoint, because whenever you build front end, you want to simplify things, right? So the front end, you want just to be only whatever the logic in the front end, but everything else that you think is changeable or something takes time or whatever, it should be implemented in the backend. In this case, the API endpoint. you would expose it. So that exposition, of course, already the blockchain, the Algorand blockchain has exposed already APIs to you. So you are actually calling another API, right? So it's just you are wrapping that kind of calling. For example, issuing a transaction, you can conveniently call it something in your API, but that basically takes the input and then calls the Algorand API. So it could be, it's just simple. It could be a wrapper just for you. You could have implemented everything from the front end as well. So, that is in principle possible. But in the spirit of like decomposing and expanding this thing, we just say, okay, the backend logic, right? And then also because, especially if you are doing some kind of more complex calling and more complex backend logics, you should write tests, and that's one. So that's what's kind of the backend. And then the front end part. The front end part is basically to allow, when given a URL, when someone goes to that URL, then they can choose a role, whether they are staff or whether they are a trainee. And based on that, of course, the API endpoints you're calling are different. So you want to be able to allow a staff to issue an NFT and a trainee to request for an NFT. Okay. And basically that is what you are building. And then you would connect the backend and the front end, right? Such that they work, everything functions. Okay. And now this part of the NFT creation and smart contract is the backend part, right? It's basically you are building the backend logic. And that means like when one uploads, whatever certificates or give you something, then you connect with the Algorand blockchain, and then you issue a transaction that creates an NFT, and then that NFT would have an address, and then you basically connect it. So what you're really building is a backend and front end, and the backend will have two elements. One element is that connects to a blockchain. The other element is that connects with the front end. And the front end exposes everything for an admin role and a trainee role. And the smart contract ultimately, which is part of, again, that backend, is to allow more functionality. So, but for now, I think most of the time, people don't get to that smart contract. That's why I'm not much more referring to it for now, because Algorand NFT, you don't need to understand smart contract, because NFT is just a name, just in the level 1, they call it. So basically, it's like a token that you can just create. You don't need to write codes, smart contracts to build it. Does that address your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I see some questions and hands. So,
How many times? How many lines from me?
so are there questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Can we use Next.js, since like you said, we're not going to be building the API per se, like we use it to just wrap another API call. So would it be possible to use Next.js, since like if we want to like securely code an API from the backend, we can do so using like Next.js, like serverless functions. So can we use that instead of like going and
Yeah, you can. You have to know also, you have to connect with a wallet, right? So when you are connecting with an Algorand, you definitely need to, especially when you are issuing a certificate, when you are creating a transaction, you must be an owner of some account. So, and then that means you have to present that private key as either, of course, in a code, you can directly send it, but you can also connect through a wallet. And in the recommended way, as you can imagine, is a wallet. And so, yeah, sure. But even with that, you can create a code in the front end to connect to a browser-based wallet or to a mobile-based wallet.
Yeah, like MetaMask or something like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. So, Margaret, in this case, that's so for different blockchains, there are different elements. So let's not complicate it for now. In the case of Algorand, an NFT is just a token. You can have how many NFT do you have, kind of thing. You know, like if you have Bitcoin, how many Bitcoin do you have? You know, Bitcoin, it's like an account has, like Bitcoin actually is even more complex. Let's say Ethereum, in the Ethereum sense, because Ethereum has an account, which means like your account has an address, and then that address has a value called, let's say, Ether. How many Ether do you have? It registers a value. That's very simple to understand. Similarly, in Algorand, there is in the memory, how much, or in the blockchain memory, call it, how much NFT you have, right? It's basically in that way, it's like a token. So there is basically a dictionary in this sense. You can think of it, a Python dictionary in the space where your account has a space, and one element of the dictionary, that dictionary is that the type of NFTs that you have. It's basically that they are countable, their addresses are just there. So it's basically directly associated to that. So it's not a contract, but that address, of course, that you can use, you can connect with that for more. Because NFT in itself can be created from an empty space, or can be created from an image, can be created on a video if you want. It's just a hash of that, or whatever, a unique identifier of that is associated to that. So it's finally, though, it's a hash of something. Okay, great. Anything else? And I might describe some things a little bit here and there, but hopefully it gets clearer as you go on, especially in the tutorials. And in particular, I would invite Yedidia and Nardos to explain a little bit at the end, just in their context, what the project is. So, but I will go through Brahan.
Okay, thank you. From my side, a little bit understanding. I think we develop front end and a back end. But my question, when we say we explain Web3, it's a distributed application, so its user is on the website, or it's interact and read and write and own the website. So if we build the backend and the front end as a system, what that makes for different from Web 2? And also maybe some additional thing from the what we do on the this week challenge, rather than building backend front end within the blockchain. If additional something there, please can you add something? Thank you.
Yeah, but it's really the most important point, right? What I'm saying is that nothing different from Web 2 and Web 3. The only difference is that where do you write your transaction? And normally it would be, let's say, inside your database. Let's imagine your backend would be the state of things is saved inside your database. Yeah. So who has what? Like, for example, a university issues degrees to graduates, and what do they do? Brown, we can have a dialogue. So basically they save, right?
Yeah.
They save it inside a certain maybe in a file system that's probably in a store, physical store sometime, most of the time as well. Then also in a database for query. Now just in a Web3, or if it is a Google or other elements, that they save it in their own server.
Sure.
But in this case, you are saving it and interacting with it into a blockchain. And that makes it just different. That makes it Web3. Because what makes it Web3? Because of the abilities and the potentials of blockchain there, like as a blockchain, it's different. First, as we said, it is unwritable. Once you have done it, you have done it. You can't go back and change. But if it is a university, you can ask somebody in the university internal probably to change something, to fake it. And it's easy to fake it because it's only that person. So that's really what makes it different. In the blockchain, it needs to be verified, and once it's verified, that's it. You are in a block, that's it. Nothing will change. So trust is established. So that's what really blockchain is. And blockchain is ledger, distributed ledger, nothing different. It's just what makes blockchain. Blockchain is what makes Web3 different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got.
Okay. Internet?
Yeah, earlier you said we don't have to just worry about, or like we don't have to write smart contracts. Like we could write smart contracts using Solidity or other ways, but for this
Solidity. So just to be, Solidity is for Ethereum.
Yeah, it's for Ethereum. Yeah,
But in this case, it's called TIL.
TL.
Yeah. So Algorand has the Algorand EVM or virtual machine, basically processes codes written in TL.
Yeah. Okay. So, are we going to write those smart contracts to bake the rules the rules that governs interacting with that blockchain? If we cannot do that, how are we going to?
So let's make it the rules that are governing that blockchain with interacting with the blockchain is written on the Algorand Web API specification, not us. Smart contracts are just codes that if you want certain additional actions to be performed by the owner, like let's say between the trainee and 10 Academy or anybody that because once that's issued, there can be so many other logic for the owner or for the issuer, what the issuer can do, what the owner of that NFT can do is kind of rule, it's like some kind of a contract, that additional contracts. So additional contracts means ownership is already written. So in another blockchain like Ethereum, even ownership of that thing must be a smart contract. But in this case, because Algorand is slightly different, its ownership of it is part of the blockchain itself. It lives in the blockchain. So that basically means you don't need to write. You only just need to increase transfer value. It's like a token, like Ether or Bitcoin. You're basically transferring a value called, in this case, NFT to that person, from one person to another. So in that case, it's just really a transfer, a transaction only. You don't need any smart contract for ownership purposes. But based on ownership, if you want to add certain logic, other transactions that can happen automatically or whatever, then you write smart contract and you connect with it.
I was thinking, hypothetically speaking, like the possibility, to make it a real world application, or to make that.
Let me correct you again. Let me correct you. A real world application, NFT is a real world.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
You don't need, in a way, it's really if it's an art, it's an art. Right? You buy it and you sell it.
So I meant like to make it a reward. I meant by like to make it practical. Just
Again, it's practical.
yeah. So like
It's
for
you
me,
need to add additional
yeah.
complexities to enrich it. I mean, the reason why I'm correcting your word is exactly because it is not a toy problem, and it is in itself valuable. It's just basically trust is established, and everybody can check. And that one basically will serve everything. The whole purpose of it is just that somebody issued a certificate to another one, and somebody owns it. And that certificate, once it's designed, it will not be changed. That's it. And I cannot, of course, it's the first element. During issuing, I can do something. That's basically similar to the smart contract. But once that's done, that's done. I will not be able to do anything, and you will not be able to do anything to change it. Right? So that means that really is value. That's exactly in blockchain. That's a value. That is practicality. And then everybody else can check. If, in this case, the certificate is to show someone has completed something, and that its value and practicality continues from that on. Now, based on that, you want to do some additional things,
So
then you
that's
can
what
write
I'm
some stuff.
asking actually. How are we going
Yeah.
to, like, is there a way to, like, for us, without like writing a smart contract to give the owner, I mean the issuer, some power to do certain things? For example, there is the paid forward model. So if the trainee or the certificate owner hasn't like pay what he has to pay, like giving a right to the issuer to like revoke that certificate, and all that kind of
Yes.
role to bake
Sure.
into that system on
Yeah.
the blockchain. To how do we do that? Is that a way in
There is a
for
way. Yes. So that basically you will get more into it, right? When you start understanding what the NFT, it has 4 addresses, and these different 4 addresses serve for different reasons: for management, for transaction, for locking, and for ownership. So based on, for example, if you don't nullify it, that's just exactly, then, like, for example, if the manager is the account of the manager part is 10 Academy, then 10 Academy can exactly do some form of revoking. So things like that. So it's baked inside it. But that one is like, now trustworthiness is of something is usually dependent on, if you really have too much power on that, people don't care about that anymore, because then you're not a true owner. So design principle becomes there. It's like, okay, that's why you need sometimes smart contract, because you don't want to change in the middle. You would be able to, of course, it would be nice if you don't change it in the middle, but pre-agreed on everything first, and then everything baked inside that. That's where smart contract become really useful.
now I get it. Thank you. One like feedback. I mean, it would help
Yeah.
for the. It just came to my mind, so just let me say,
Yeah.
it would be very nice if we're going to have like this kind of Q&A about the project on Wednesday, because like by the time, I mean, by tomorrow, we will get a very good idea of what technology we'll be using, and at the same time we're going to have also a lot of questions as to how to do it. So it would be very nice if we're going to have like in the morning session, maybe like you being present, and like we asking you questions like this, because like I didn't know about Algorand and other specific tools that we're going to be using for this project. So for me to ask really good questions that's very specific to this project would be for me to, I mean, after I know a little bit about the project or the tools, I could ask a really good question. So it would
Yeah.
help to clarify the project, I guess.
Okay.
Just
Feedback well taken. So I will, at least for this one and so for continuous for other times, we will try to set up that. Yeah. So definitely there will be one on Wednesday, but we'll try to set up for the next projects as well. Great. Okay. So then with that, let me just again go through just briefly, because by now we have discussed everything and everybody seems, Michael, yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My question was, I was having a little bit of understanding about the Ethereum network or Ethereum blockchain network, but my question is, do we have here some type of test nets where we deploy our,
Yes.
or where we can see our application running?
Yeah, Algorand has testnet as well as also Sandbox. You will be playing Sandbox. You can install Sandbox in your computer and you will interact with it.
Will
And
not
it has,
be, I think will not be, we are not supposed to deploy our applications to a live network, right?
yeah, because that one requires money, right?
Yeah.
Algos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the testnet part is only what is required.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great. I think these are all clear. So, my job has been done. In a way, what we want is, of course, to be able to generate certificates as NFTs. And that means this NFT, the actual certificate, is in a distributed file system. There are some that you can choose. There are, and then its hash or whatever element or the pointer will be, kind of baked in the NFT, and then that is where you would be able to then us at the Stein Academy, for example, the staff issues an NFT to a trainee. A trainee first has to request, and then that process happens, and that is what we wanted to do, and you are helping us to build. That's the business case. Okay, so it's basically to be able to generate certificate and distribute it in blockchain instead of just the usual way that we are doing. And a number of things you will learn, a lot, because there's no data. A lot more of it's just building applications. Web app in this case, it is gonna be, you're gonna be using some form of, you're gonna need to understand a form of, either REST or GraphQL type of APIs, what front-end, back-end designs, as well as implementations. And then also within the backend, the usual backend between front-end and backend, but also within the backend, or within to connect to a blockchain as well, to a node. And you have to find a node, what does that mean? And then also understanding distributed file systems, because you are storing the actual asset, in this case, the certificate is that's human readable version of it. You are storing it somewhere. Of course, you can store it anywhere, but we advise, just in the spirit of Web3, it's going to be on a distributed file system, such that even if someone kind of goes out, still nobody, like for example, if you store it on Google Drive, it's possible, but if Google Drive denies you, that's it, right? So, but in a distributed file system, it's just like P2, kind of BitTorrent and other related things, it will not be. And then, of course, building basically that all connected together becomes a Web3 app, and that and then you also really understand unit testing. In this case, if you are writing especially smart contracts, it's the most important things. These days, a lot of the Web3 jobs actually are about testing, because you have to know, once you bake it, a smart contract, you can't change it. So if you have a bug, that's it. Someone can utilize it and your entire project fails, right? So that means understanding testing and security analysis of a smart contract is the most important thing, and a lot of companies are hiring for that actually more than anything. But ultimately, your skills are really much more of on application building applications, and you will learn more than that. Web3 the apps, and the points are given here, and the usual, and that's an individual project. And in terms of instruction, you really are just expected to go through new concepts and summarizing them as usual. So you need to write blogs that ultimately, so you have to really write your understanding from exactly what is Web3 to how blockchain works, to wallets and its benefits and uses, and actually, of course, within the Algorand things, what are accounts and assets in Algorand. And there are different elements of Algorand that you should review a little bit, but the most essential element for this project are accounts and assets, a standard asset they call them. And then, of course, you basically set up your Git repo as usual, and you put things there, and then you basically also explore using the sandbox, because the sandbox allows you to just do faster. Otherwise, if you use testnet, it has a 4-second lag that you have to do for every request, because it's mirroring the actual blockchain, which has about 4-second time interval for every request to be processed, right? But in a sandbox, it will be just very fast. So building that in a sandbox is important. So establishing, kind of creating, again, if you're going to be using Windows, you're going to suffer. So just many of the things that you're going to do, if you're using Windows, you're going to suffer. So I would really recommend either dual boot and work many of the things on Linux. But otherwise, yeah, it's going to be less help, unfortunately. And then you build front end and back end. You use the Python SDK for, basically the API. The blockchain has its own API, and that its own API is exposed to SDKs, and you use the Python SDK, but also you can use other JavaScript SDK and the Go if you want. I think that I don't know how they provide SDKs to different things, but yeah. The PyTeal, which is actually the one for smart contracts, that's Teal is their kind of EVM language, and PyTeal is like you can use Python to write in Teal, right, to compile into Teal, and that one is really the most recommended for actually writing smart contracts in Algorand. And you design and implement, and you combine, and basically that's it. And you integrate with wallets, because it's important. Like you can't just at first, for the very first test, task one and task one, you may just create, private key and use only in the program the private key. But if you are building application, it's a must. You must connect with a wallet, and you can have basically the web or browser-based wallet, browser extension wallets for that, or another thing. Okay. So, and that's just it. And then you write blogs, right? There will be tutorials later on Web3 and concepts, and tomorrow on DApps on Algorand by Nardos, and then NFTs and standard assets by Edidia, and then also on wallet integration, why and how, as well as also advanced Python testing. You need, by Azaria, and then on Thursday, components of web app, which is basically on 10x, the 10x team. Hopefully we will talk to them to provide something, their experience, at least in terms of like designing and building front end and back end using Ant design, because sometimes when you are building bigger systems, you need better to use some frameworks. Okay, and then Algorand smart contracts, and then on Friday, if there are more requests, Azaria and Anastasia can provide some help on Friday, some tutorials if there are some needs on that. Okay, and submissions are the usual, nothing. And here you really can start here. The references are much more, I would say, very useful, and a lot more of what you need is here. So you should look into them. Great. So, Andinet, do you have another question? or is that from?
Yes, I've heard you say that it's better to have a Linux operating system to work.
Yeah.
Is that like necessary for the sandbox or other parts of the project?
I think the
to work?
sandbox is much more given within the Linux system. I think
Can you do this on WSL too, like Windows System
you
4.0?
can build it. You can build it. It's the same as like, you know, Docker in Windows is not that easy as much as it is easy in Linux. It's going to be a Docker based, and it has certain things. So you can try. It's not, but I really strongly believe that Windows is not the platform for data engineering, machine learning engineering. I think for blockchain engineering, maybe. I don't know that much. And so it's the main problem is that a lot of things in the cloud are built by Linux. So now everything is assumed to be built in the cloud, not in a computer. So now when you are trying to mirror that in your computer, you're using Windows, it kind of fails. That's where the conflict is. A lot more of it is built in the cloud these days, and people build systems for the cloud. So
Yeah, okay.
that's the hardest part.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with whatever time remaining, Ididia or Nardos, if you are there, because you went through this process of understanding from day 1 to day 5 before, is there anything that could help people understand better, that you might give advice if you are there?
Yes, maybe. Okay, go on, Nardos.
That's fine. Go ahead. Okay. So in terms of resources, I would say that take a look at the official Algorand documentation. It's really amazing. You can find anything in there, even the details that you think you're not gonna find, or if you are more on videos. But there's also videos on that as well. So I think just take a look at the documentation before going to other resources. That's one advice. Okay, that's it. Maybe go on.
Okay, yeah. I think the first thing that you all should look into is the official documentation of Algorand. In addition to that, I think it's best for everyone to at least try to start the sandbox locally on their environment. So everyone go ahead to their GitHub official GitHub page, and Yabi is shared on the document there, the sandbox link.
Yeah, I think it's shared. It's here. It's yeah.
Okay, so everyone go ahead and clone that repo and try to start the sandbox. It's a Docker Compose file, so you just can start it by /sandbox app. It's a Docker container, and you can start the sandbox. And if you guys are having a trouble, maybe we can have another way of starting the container. But the best thing to do, because of the latency and other issues, is to try to use the sandbox locally. And if not, we'll try to figure out other resources.
Yeah, and just as you know, a lot of the people in batch 5 took most their time installing Sandbox, right? If I'm not mistaken, or trying to get that thing up.
Yes, yeah. I suggest you just start installing it as soon as possible. It took me longer time for me as well.
So it's of course, that's why it's important that you do it as soon as possible and don't that much spend installing that, and get the help, because hopefully that there is more help this time than last time. So, and in another, from conceptual perspective, what are the things that I probably missed in the description that you might want to tell, like, you know, to fit it. Of course, we will have also on Wednesday more Q&A, I think, with all the tutors plus me as well. But is there anything you want to add other than that?
Conceptual wise, I think you covered most of it. Maybe as we go along to in the weeks, if something came up, then we can reach out to you guys and give you more help or advices. Like for now, I don't have anything to add.
Anything you want to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great. So yeah, like FSA, that's just the part. I think that's you clone, you CD sandbox, and if everything works, .sandbox app would work. But somehow that doesn't work for most people because there are certain configurations that you need, or I don't know, for some reason. Because if you look at Sandbox app or the Docker Compose, it of course contains a few things, right? So, and it will establish as well the Postgres, it will do that and this. So there are sometimes certain issues, but hopefully that should be easy this time.
Yes, so based on your internet connection, it might take a while to start up the containers, but as we said earlier, it's best for everyone to start the containers right after this session. Everyone try to start your containers, and if you are having or facing any kind of problem, please reach out on Slack, and everyone will be there to assist.
Okay, and the net?
I mean, is it because the image is so big to start, or is it a configuration problem? I mean, why is it difficult?
I think you would figure it out in a way. I think it's built in a certain way, and sometimes it is not just to see. It was working for some people, but then there are certain configurations they had to do. In Windows, I remember we were going through, and there are certain issues. I don't know. It's how the order of installs. Do you remember what most of the issues were, Narcos? I think it was got to do some.
For me,
In Windows 30, there was.
for me, I was using Linux, but the images were taking longer to download, and that was the main problem. And I had to do it at the night time because it kept on failing. And also, it's going to stop midway. I don't know what the main problem was. I was using Linux, and you need
But
really
Windows,
a
I
good
think
connection.
I remember there was some particular issue that most people had faced. And I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but I think it's something related to their Docker. And
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just that their way of Docker was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
working with this way of Docker thing.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay, great. Hopefully everything is clear. If not clear, it will get clearer. But this is just another slightly different from machine learning and data engineering that you have mostly got used to. Okay, Johannes. Johannes?
Okay, thank you for your presentation. My question is there any folder we need to clone work on that?
Sorry, further what?
After cloning the repository,
Yeah.
is there any other create other repository, or we have to work on that?
You mean for the sandbox?
Yeah.
For the sandbox, I think it's that one. Follow the README. You should be up and running and test it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And the 10 Academy team, you can stop the recording. and happy web string, everyone. Bye.